June the 14th, 2026. And I want to encourage you today that the things that you've been facing maybe right now are going to pass. It isn't meant to stay. In fact, the philosopher and comedian, whose name was Mark Lowry, tried to remind his audience in many videos that the things that they're facing are not going to stay, they're going to pass. So, right now, you may feel that you're in the midst of a crisis. You might feel that you're going through something very difficult, and it seems like a huge problem at the moment. Let me give you an example. In the last few days, prior to a couple of days ago, we had a lot of rain in my area. In fact, in one weekend, we had 5 inches of rain, which is about 127 millimeters. That is a lot of rain. And of course, it saturated so many of the fields. And my neighbor came to me last weekend and basically said, my basement has flooded. He says, now, of course, we're going to have to, do some work to get the water out. And I thought to myself, hey, got off pretty fortunate. The last weekend, I went down in the basement, looked around, there wasn't any seeming water. Well, we had a huge rainstorm midweek. And all of a sudden, my wife comes home and she says, the house smells kind of musty. Now, I live in a 100-year-old house, and we have a combination of dirt basement and also as well, a cement basement. So I went down and I looked, and sure enough, there was a pool of water, actually a pretty heavy pool of water in the basement. Now, fortunately, we have a sump pump area where the water had accumulated. So I assumed that the sump pump was working, but I discovered that it had to be plugged in. So I plugged in the sump pump and it took the water away. But the water table is so saturated with water that I have to go down about every 4 hours and turn the sump pump on so it takes out the water. Now, the house doesn't smell musty anymore, but it just reminded me that there was a big problem at the moment. But as it dries out, eventually it's going to pass. And I want to tell you right now that what may seem like a problem at this moment will actually eventually pass. And that is something I want to encourage you with. Remember, whatever you're facing today is going to eventually pass. What feels heavy will one day become a lesson that will make your soul stronger. A few years ago, actually a couple of decades ago, um, I was in a period of unemployment for about 7 months. Now, it was kind of a forced sabbatical. It was during the early 1990s, which was, of course, in my country, a time of recession. And I had lost my job, and basically, I had three small children. But you know what happened? The Lord provided me with a place to stay. And during those 7 months, I was actually beautifully provided for. In fact, the running situation for my children and me was we would go to the mail a couple of times a week. And just when it seemed like we were right to the edge of our finances, a check would arrive. Money would arrive in the mail. And it got to the point where my children, when we would go down to get the mail, would say, Dad, do you think there's a check in the mail today? And I said, I don't know. Let's find out. And there was a check. What I discovered was that the Lord would provide for me even in those particular situations. I have a life of, where the Lord provides. Like last weekend, when things were a little bit tight, my wife and I received a check from somebody that helped us go through this next situation. So the simple thing is, what feels heavy today will one day become a lesson that will make your soul stronger. That's important. You see, when you and I go through the difficult times, when we get right to the edge and we walk by faith and we walk in trust, you know what's going to happen? You are going to become, on the other side. You'll remember how somehow, some way, you made it through. And you look back and you say, hey, if I can make it through what I went through, I can do it again. Now, it's not pleasant going through those situations, but you see, when you have life experience, when you have come through and you've discovered that you're stronger, you're more resourceful. You are wiser. You know what to do in the situation. It really changes the whole narrative. There have been many, many times where something has happened, let's say to an automobile. I remember the very first time I was, someone had allowed me to use their vehicle. And they said, you can use the vehicle for as long as you need it. So I got in the vehicle, I drove to where I needed to be, which at the time was during my college days. And I went into the school, did the classes, came out, and the vehicle wouldn't start. And so I popped the hood and I was looking under the hood, and all of a sudden, someone tapped on the hood and said, is there something wrong? I said, yeah, I can't get this thing started. He said, well, let me look. And right away, he looked and he wiggled the battery cable and he said, that's your problem. He says, your battery cable is loose. He says, do you happen to have a crescent wrench or an adjustable wrench? I said, yeah, I do. And so he took the adjustable wrench, or what we would call the crescent wrench, and he tightened up the bolt. And all of a sudden, he says, now try it. And I tried it and it started. So when the vehicle that I'm driving doesn't start, the first thing I always check is to make sure that the battery cable is, of course, connected. I had a perfect illustration of that this spring when I put a brand new battery in my 1965 classic GMC truck. And it started perfectly fine. But then the next morning, I went out and it wouldn't start. Well, I thought it was the new battery. And so I went and talked to the place where I bought the battery. And they said, well, bring it back in. So I went and, popped the hood to, get the battery out. And it was then that I realized that I had not tightened the battery cable as tight as it should. Well, as soon as I tightened the battery cable up really, really tight, the truck has started every single time. What was the thing that made me realize? It was the fact that years ago, I had discovered what the problem was when it came to why a battery didn't start. It was because you got to make sure that the battery cables are nice and tight so that you can keep going. So the simple fact is, lessons are learned through the difficult situations that we find ourselves in. The pain that you might feeling right now may be the very reason why you smile with gratitude. Sometimes we go through painful times, but when we come out the other side, you smile at your resilience. You smile at the wise things that you learned. You smile at the experience that you've gained over it. You become more resourceful. You have become, more creative. You have become stronger. You have become more, have more character, more integrity. Integrity and character are built through both the good and bad times. You become a better person when you look at things with thanksgiving and gratitude. You can become bitter or you can become better. The choice is yours on how you're going to react in a situation. Let's say someone offends you, someone hurts you. You can sit there and wallow in it. You can sit there and, make it into bigger than it was. It may be difficult at times. I'm not denying that. We all get hurt. We all get offended. And it's okay to be hurt and offended for a few moments. But then it comes to the place where you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to become bitter. Instead, I'm going to forgive. Instead of nursing this situation, instead of rehearsing what I should have said and should have done, and instead of cursing the person and, breaking the relationship, I am going to instead reverse it. I'm going to forgive and I'm going to disperse it because I don't want that situation to ruin my life. Years ago, I came across a lady who she came to my office and said, I am carrying a heavy burden. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. And she related to me how that, 10 years before she got into trouble with the Canada Revenue Service. And she was still carrying the pain and also as well the fear that was going on. I said, that thing happened 10 years ago. You filed your taxes 10 years in a row without any problem at all. Why are you still carrying this particular burden? You see, we can carry things for years. We can carry it for a lifetime. We can be a victim for a lifetime. And we can also uh, put that victimhood on our children and our grandchildren. In Canada, we see that happening all the time. What happened to a certain group of people 150 years ago, the generations of that same group of people are carrying that pain and expecting people to treat them with kid gloves because of that. They didn't forgive, they haven't released that. And so everyone around them is, of course, expected to walk with, on eggshells. Have you ever met somebody who, literally, when they come into the room, there's a dark cloud that comes? They are playing the victim, or they are manipulating and they are trying to control the situation because of their own insecurity. Why? Because something bad happened to them and they have not released it. That's why forgiveness, love, and acceptance are absolutely essential in our lives so that we can walk eventually with gratitude and also have a smile on our face. The pain that you feel right now could be the reason you smile with gratitude. It all depends on your attitude. One of my friends, I was actually looking at his obituary today. His name is Tyson Spence. And Tyson used to say to me, he says, attitude is everything. And he was right. Attitude is everything. When you and I walk through the painful situation with the attitude, I am going to overcome this. I am going to conquer this thing. I am not going to be defeated by this thing. And I am going to win over this situation. Winners are people who have been basically lost at one time or another. It was Michael Jordan who said, I have missed more shots in basketball than I ever, hit. He understood that just because you miss it, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the game. It just means that you take another shot. That's what it basically means. So the pain that you feel right now and what feels heavy today and what seems as a big problem is going to pass. One day you're going to look back And you're going to realize that you grew through once through you grew through once that one thing that you thought was going to break you. You are stronger than you think. You are better than where you feel right now. It's your choice and it's my choice. And so today, that's my encouragement for you. Remember, you're not a victim, you are a victor. You are not being overcome, you are an overcomer. You are not being defeated, you, of course, are undefeated because you have grown through the things. You have gone through the fire. You've gone through the flood and you've come out the other side. And it's wonderful to know that you haven't been conquered. You're more than a conqueror. That's what I'm encouraging you today to realize that what may feel heavy today is going to make you stronger. What seems like a big problem right now, it's eventually going to pass. And the pain that you feel right now may be the very reason why you smile with gratitude. You see, one day you're going to look back and realize that you grew through that one thing that you thought was going to break you. That's what I'm reminding you today. My name is Robert Dean Steele. I want to thank you so much for watching my videos and listening to what I have to say. And if you like what you've been seeing, and also hearing, press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want to thank all my subscribers and all the people that do that. Also, as well, check out my daily YouTube shorts. Every day I do videos. These are videos that are usually under 1 minute. They have one theme and they could really encourage you. So check out my YouTube shorts today. And thank you so much for watching the video. And remember, one day you're going to look back and realize that the thing that you thought was going to break you, the pain that you've been facing, the thing that you thought was going to crush you, is the very thing that you grew through and that you became stronger, more resourceful, and also as well wiser. You thought this thing was going to break you. It didn't. And you are stronger than you ever were before. Remember, attitude is everything. And gratitude, yes, and thanksgiving is the very thing that's going to get you through what you're facing today, whatever it may be. My name is Robert Dean Steele. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Have yourself a great and godly day.